The city never sleeps, but our protagonist, James Carra, can't seem to wake up from it. New York gleams in neon, a cathedral built for the rich, while men like him are left to choke in its shadows. He wanders in an alley with the badge still pinned to his chest, but it weighs heavier than his guilt. A detective's work is meant to bring the truth, but in this city, the truth is bought, sold, and buried under glass towers. His partner calls it survival. Close the case, fake the reports to please the higher ups, take the paycheck, and move on. But Kara, haunted by what he's lost, still believes justice should mean more than signatures and testimonies on a corporate file. This is the future of a corrupted city, about to witness its great downfall. In 2046, USA discovered that all forms of wildlife, including humans, were slowly going extinct due to low birth rates, global warming, unstable weather conditions, acid rain, and many more were soon becoming a reality, because of which the solution to prolong the inevitable issue was initiated. Thus came among these the birth of Icarite, a physical strand made from modern cutting edge technology that is set to store every detail of a human being in itself, from their personality to their daily habits. Once they pass away due to unfortunate circumstances, the Icarite will be used to transfer the conscience of said individual into a new body of their liking, prolonging the life on Earth to make them almost unkillable. And it is also made from the toughest of material, which makes it close to indestructible. I say almost, as there is something interesting that I'd like to talk about later on. However, this technology has its own flaws. While transferring the conscious from one body to another sounds really effective, it doesn't eliminate the defects the other body contains. For instance, if the receiving body has lactose intolerance, then whoever conscious gets placed into that body will also be lactose intolerant. This applies to anybody with any kind of defect, and hence came shortly after the grading system. The grading system grades a body based on the amount of damage or physical condition that it has within, and they are graded from a grade A to grade F, with grade A being the best of the best bodies with barely any defects or physical damages on it, to grade F, which contains a lot of defects and physical damage. A junkie or an extremely obese person would be considered somewhere in the grade F or E category, whereas athletes and well-fit individuals are considered grade A. And it should have been obvious by now that all of these come at a price, when the lower grades are often cheaper to obtain because of all the issues that it has, and the higher grades are more expensive to obtain, which makes it feel like a rich people thing to get a high grade one. But this also comes with another problem. Grading a body is alright, there's nothing wrong with it, but the ability to transfer your conscious from one body to another is also perfectly fine. But however, sourcing your body is a whole new problem to tackle. Initially, it was kept as a voluntary service, where whoever wishes to lend their body can do so, and expect a nice paycheck from the buyer depending on the grade the body is in. But as you would expect, the demand for more has increased, and people voluntarily providing their body for other people's use has gone down. Hence, a new rule has been enforced, allowing Icarite to be a mandatory installation onto any human body once they turn 21. Sounds promising, as now everyone will have access to eternal life. But there is a catch to this. Now that everyone has access to the eternal life, their body is no longer theirs, but a property of the government. So, in order to keep their body, they'll not only have to follow strict dietary plans, maintain 10,000 steps a day, get regular exercises done on a daily basis, but they will also have to pay a monthly subscription to keep hold of their original body. Should they fail to do so, the Icarite will be transferred to the location of the Department of Immortality, which is a police department of this era, to track them down and extract the Icarite from their body, thus effectively killing them, but only keeping their conscience alive in a storage bank so that next time when any of their relatives, friends have the option to come back for another body or their own body, they can pretty much bring him back from the dead, but no one knows how long will it be stored there. Very similar to another indie game that I have spoken not too long ago called Cloudpunk, where the supporting character named Control was all this time a conscious of a dead man who had to stay alive past his will to clear his debt. I highly recommend watching that video as it explores a similar concept from a different perspective. The confiscated bodies are then graded and priced accordingly during auctions, where the highest bidders would win the body of their choice. While there are retaliations of this and people standing against it, the noise they make is nothing but a bird's chirp to the officials' ears. And with rapid urbanization and increasing cost of living, day by day it's becoming harder for one to sustain a good body. But despite all this, you'd still think that having an eternal life sounds like a good plan. Well, think again, because there's a new disease that arose from this innovation: desynchronization, often used in places where things don't align with each other, like when a music video doesn't match the vibe of the audio, or when a group of dancers don't dance in rhythm with each other. In technical terms, it's when something of yours doesn't go well with something of others, and that has now slowly become common in this era. Once the ichorite of another person is transferred into the new body, it's not just the conscience that the new body has to bear, but everything else, such as the person's previous traumas, mental and physical abuses, past medication issues, damage to the body, and to the mind. No matter how highly graded a body is, desynchronization is bound to happen, which is why people all who often do this have to go through a therapy session for desynchronization for at least a year to get used to the new body and its conditions. However, sometimes it remains unsuccessful, and people will have to resort using a drug called ambrosia, which helps ease the desync issues that often brings memories of the past to haunt the users and even alter events to make it more of a nightmare than a pleasant thing to see. This is the city New York has become, and it's not looking good. Yet the lower class people can't do much till someone in the higher class, brave enough to shake the system, can cause a chain of reaction in that favor. Edward Green is one of the main people whom we have to investigate. He belongs to the top tier of individuals, the wealthiest of the wealthiest. And it's also through him that many rules such as making ichorite for everyone mandatory at the age of 21 exist. And he has done so because his wife refused to use ichorite and died a natural death, which also brought up the whole, volunteering to give your body thing. While he lived for as long as time could tell, during this period he has gone through several body changes, and it's no surprise to hear that he did have some major desynchronization issues as well. But at this time, we had to investigate his death. His ichorite is damaged, meaning his death is final and there's no reviving him at this state. It's unclear who the killer is, but by the looks of it, someone was at play. Someone had ill intent and decided to murder him cold-blooded, and was clever enough to cover his tracks, so we couldn't get to him just yet. But while investigating, we find out that he has two other close friends with him, which already begs the question of which of these two betrayed him, since Green isn't publicly known to make a lot of friends in the first place. Yet, his death became even more mysterious, as an Ouroboros symbol with the date carved onto the tree just right next to his death place has present. It's not known who carved it, but the date coincidentally matches his death date as well. The same can be said about his other friend Kovalev, who also did something similar but on a much larger scale and was more public than Green did. He not only took down an entire ship with him, but was also able to take out several high-class elites who had enough money to control what happens in the city and what doesn't. And it seems like the motive was slowly coming to light as document implying newer rules to lower the age limit of who can get access to ichorite was coming down from 21 to 18 in plans. On the outside, it seems like nothing wrong was happening till you realize that this gives the government more reasons to charge you at a much earlier time, which will set many off guard and help to give up their bodies at a much younger, more healthier state. Supporting that are plans to increase ichorite subscription cost by 5%. Already, not a lot of them are able to pass through their first subscription without any sacrifices, yet here the rich are trying to become richer for no reason. Among the elite are two other individuals who are in the middle of a buyout, a suitcase of cash for a blueprint of something, but it looks to be someone's house. And the most important of all, George Boyle, coming from the Boyle family, the inventors of Icarite. Their beginnings were humble and thoughtful, but the children were anything but. And the reason why Icarite was about to become more expensive and harder to obtain. Not to mention another Ouroboros with the date mentioned today, the day the floating bar known as Icarus would be brought down. Inside the safe, a pure bottle of whiskey, which in this universe is considered very rare and expensive to obtain, and a letter from Green stating that it had to be done. Judging by the dates with this and with whom the Green was close to, we can paint the picture that Kovalev was the one behind this explosion and destruction, but it still doesn't explain how Green passed away. But a simple keycard and a blueprint we found earlier would somehow solve this, revealing a hidden room behind a safe in Green's mansion with another dead person called Brian Thompson, the same man who funded Green's project in building orphanages for the orphans. A kind gesture, but to him, finding him dead there inside a hidden room made no sense. Till we go down to find a whole room full of elites, the top 1% of the people, from senators to high-class celebrities to journalists to even politicians. Everyone was present but dead. Even a note stating how they plan to manipulate the audience into thinking that what they're doing is for the good, but with a catch. They seem to exclude Green from it, despite himself being among the top members if not higher than them, and even inviting them to this so-called luxury party. He seems to be excluded from it all. And moreover, we find a hidden Icarite transmitter at the lower levels, one that's meant for personal use, and many bodies that have just turned 21, fresh and ready to be used. It seems that they were meant to be orphanages who once were under the care of Green and Brian till they turned 21, and they have all the reasons to keep them on hold whenever any of the elites needed a new body for eternal living. Sounds fucked up, but a hidden set of cameras reveal that Green was behind it all. He was the one who killed all these individuals. He was the one who instructed Kovalev to kill the ones on Icarus as well, and he killed himself at the end. Now, remember the whole desynchronization thing we spoke earlier? One of the side effects is your inner voice slowly overtakes you and controls your actions, almost like you have a second personality, and that is much more deadlier than your current one. And it seems that his inner voice had enough of exploiting the poor and decided to go all out on the elites, taking everyone with him, and the final straw was Green. Hence, he took over himself, making it look like there was a murderer behind all this, so I would not draw conclusions that Green was the true murderer. But despite all this, there is still one thing left that is yet to take over: the protest at the Central Park, now replaced with artificial trees that to avoid rain in the first place, since rain has turned acid in the recent years. These protesters would serve as final straw to take out any remaining elites that Green has planned to meet at the same location. But luckily, almost all of them were dead, with the only well-known psychiatrist, James Salma, alive and barely clinging onto her life. We can either save her or kill her, which alters the endings, but ultimately, it's more of should we feed the inner conscious more drama or put an end to it. This was Green's whole plan, to bring down the city with him and proclaim that the final death is what everyone needs for it to be seen that there was a limit on how many times one can switch bodies. James Carra is the protagonist of this whole game, and all these interactions and deductions made could not have been done without his help and his crime partner Sarah Kai. He is a depressed drunkard who just lost his wife as she killed herself some time back and was responsible for the Mugen train incident. The train incident, where his reckless actions costed him his body and his partner's life, along with several casualties and a news headline shaming the department that he was working for. Officially, his license is suspended for some time, but unofficially he was assigned Green's case thanks to his chief, who felt pity for him and did it for old time's sake. What started as a simple extract the Icarite, label it as an accident, to now as a full-time murder investigation and hidden secrets involving his department and the corrupt elite. Apart from this, he was an excellent baseball player and served the army at some point before having his body and occupation changed in the process. As a now private investigator, he does have some fancy gadgets to show off. A simple UV light to trace down blood or any substances which sometimes can be hidden from human eyes. An X-ray gun that not only shows the wiring layout of the building or the direction from where a person was hit from, but also shows from where the bullet was shot from. And the most powerful tool of all, and the main highlight of this game, the Reconstructor. As the name suggests, that it brings a place back to its time before it went to destruction. This gives a much accurate representation of what happened, but at the cost of using too much power, almost requiring 3 cities worth of electricity to run its course. But that doesn't mean he can't just use the constructor from the beginning itself to get the whole picture. It's only after figuring out what happened using the other equipments is when we can use the constructor through that information to reconstruct the whole place. He can use it even in places where he once was, but however, the machine will use his memory to recreate the scene. This causes extreme internal damages and trauma to the past as well. This is shown when he had to visit the train to see why or what has he missed that seemed to be common in Green's and Kovalev's death. He is known to be too nosy into other people's matter, but as a private investigator he has to, or he won't go far, or anywhere else basically. Like Green, James also has desynchronization issues that often brings his wife into the picture and gives him seizure in the process. But as time progresses, it starts being possessive and causing him to remember his past mistakes and actions that caused those mistakes. James even had a son at some point, but its room is inaccessible. In one of the flashbacks, we can enter the room to find the same Ouroboros with the date mentioned. Given how the other two correlated with their respective death, it's safe to assume that their child met the same fate. But this is where the path diverges. Once we meet our crime partner in person, we have to first come to a conclusion on who is behind all this. Green, or another person whom we'll refer to as the murderer. Claiming Green to be the murderer will have us get to the true ending, while claiming someone else as the murderer will give us the worst ending. And just before confronting with Jane Salma, we realize that her body isn't hers but Sarah's body, which lent to her in the black market to save up money to retrieve her best friend and lover, Taylor. Whereas whomever the murderer is, wants Jane Salma dead, as she is the last standing elite. While as much as killing her would do justice to the world, it would leave Sarah with a decaying body and not enough money to help Taylor. And our final confrontation also varies, as if we side with our conscience, we see Jane as someone else and not herself. The amount of details put into this one decision is really well done, and while we don't get to see the aftermath of it, still puts into picture the amount of potential the game has and how it would have been if they went all out on this whole game. You may have noticed that throughout my breakdown of James Carra, that a vision of him coming too close to his wife, only to be pulled away by the Icarite. But throughout this whole series, we spoke about death as a certainty that they aren't coming back. Green, Kovalev, George Boyle, should he decide to kill him, Rachel, James' wife, and their son. All of them have something in common apart from the Ouroboros symbol, and that's their death is final. There's no way to revive them or transfer the soul from one body to another, despite what many officials claim that the Icarite is almost indestructible. Someone has found a way to develop a poison that can destroy or melt the Icarite altogether. This is why when James found the substance in Green's residence, he kept his camera off so no one would know that he took that evidence with him, cause his wife used the same poison on herself before killing herself, so that no one could bring her back to life. She could have done this because the depression of losing their child, but it isn't explained much in detail. Same goes for Green as well. who used the poison on himself so no one could revive him for either questioning or having his torture continue. The only difference is for George and Kovalev, their Icarite is destroyed, not melted, so they still have a small possibility to be revived. However, it all depends on whether they can do it in a short time or quite some time later on. It seems that what Jane and we believe is that while humans do have the option to live eternally, and like how they do here, it doesn't mean that they should, as the amount of times the Icarite had to be adjusted for the new body can sometimes put overload and cause desynchronization, which solves the case that the true murder isn't green or a third person, it's greed. The greed to live longer than anyone else that causes these issues to arise in the first place, disrupting the whole ecosystem just so they can live longer than needed. It's an interesting concept to try and see how the world progresses, and luckily enough, thanks to this video game, it's safe to say that although nobody wants to die, everybody has to die at some point to balance the cycle of life and death.